Okay, welcome everyone. I know it's going to take a second for everyone to join, but I'm going to go ahead and start with a few housekeeping. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Brittany Higginbotham, and I'm a communications and digital specialist for the Institute for Public Relations. Today, we're thrilled to present a webinar in partnership with Cvent on how to align your event marketing strategy to the right promotional channels. Today, our panelists include Carissa Bartlett, Industry Marketing Manager for Cvent, and Tiffany Stanford, Demand Gen Strategist for Cvent. I'll let them go further on their backgrounds, but a few housekeeping notes that this webinar is being recorded and will be available for playback within 48 hours. We encourage questions in the Q&A box, and there's going to be a Q&A portion at the end. Please share comments and resources in the chat box. And if you have any tech issues, you can feel free to message myself or any IPR staff member to resolve. And then with that, I'll hand it over to Chris and Tiffany to kick things off.
Hey guys, thanks for being here with us today. I know it's Friday, so hopefully we all are in like an excited kind of fun mood to talk about one of my favorite topics. I'm a part of the marketing team here at Cvent, and my passion is really building experiences, connections, finding ways to drive brand connection through different channels and different marketing ways. Really that omni-channel marketing approach is my jam. And when we think about it, in the context of our events, it's a really, really great time to be in marketing, right? And in PR, there's just so much opportunity out there for content and getting people exposure to our brand and our message. It's a great time to be us, I think, right now.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, everyone. I'm Tiffany Stanford. I help lead demand gen here at Cvent. My primary goal is to deliver high quality leads to sales and drive growth for the business through brand awareness, channels, and tactics. I'm really focused on the channels and tactics that truly do create and capture demand. This includes channels like our website, paid social, organic social, our podcast, and obviously our bread and butter events and webinars. All right, so let's jump into it, shall we? Okay, to kick us off, you have so many tools at your disposal right now to not only get people registered for your event, but really create that vibe and that energy, that connection, so that by the time you kick off your webinar or your conference or whichever event format you're hosting, your audience is at peak readiness to take in information and take action. And when we think about what happens after your event ends, there are ways to keep the momentum going by reusing the information and definitely making it worthwhile through marketing different channels afterwards. Okay, just a reminder, as we move forward here, we really want you all to be part of the action today. And it's Friday, like Chris has said, so definitely chime in the chat, ask questions. We'll take those questions a little bit more towards the end of today's session, but we'll love to just engage with you all throughout the session today.
So I don't need to tell all of you, right, that it's been a real wild couple of years for all of us in marketing. And this has really changed the way that we approach our strategy a ton. There are new marketing channels popping up all of the time, right? And new messages and new formats and new ways to distribute information. And last year alone, HubSpot, a HubSpot survey of all of us marketers, right, said that 80% of us said it's changed more in the last 3 years than it did in the last 50, which is nuts. I mean, is that something that you guys are thinking and feeling on a day-to-day basis, right? It's so different now than it was a couple of years ago, and it's changing at such a rapid pace. And finding that multi-channel marketing and finding creative ways to fuel your marketing channels with the right content is a necessity, because leveraging a single channel with one strategy, one message really no longer works, right? I think especially in the communication space and the PR, when you are trying to communicate something to your audiences, right now, there's this new drive for our audience of any demographic, right? They crave truth, they crave authenticity, they crave information, and they're always looking for more than one proof point. It's not like how we used to be able to do it before, where, one release kind of just solidified your market position, right? They need more ways to get to know you and see what you're about, what your brand is about. And they want to do it also on their own time. So our audience has become super demanding, right? And our marketing and outreach needs to be discoverable and interactive in a way that makes people really want to consume it, right? When and how they want. And that's why this multi-channel content approach is so important. And it will take your promotion for things like your events to really the next level. So how can we use some of these channels and this content and this idea to market our events that we're hosting as an organization? And how should we think about events within the customer journey and as a content creation tool for us? What do you think, Tiff?
So, how to find the right mix of channels and tactics. The first question that we want to explore is this, because this is something that is, at least for me, it can be very challenging and a daunting process. So I always start with your audience. You need to have a very deep understanding of your ideal customer profile, or your ICP, and where your audience hangs out online and makes those buying decisions. For example, if your influencers are millennials and Gen Zs, then YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram are probably your go-to platforms. But if your decision makers or champions are CEOs or Gen Xs at enterprise companies or startups, then LinkedIn is probably the place to be. So for us here at Cvent, obviously, event planners and marketers are our primary audience. LinkedIn is a huge channel for both personas, but we have also explored YouTube this past year, and we've seen a lot of great success there. On top of the YouTube, we also launched a new podcast in 2022, and we've seen a lot of great engagement metrics there as well. Just to kind of put that in perspective, I'm proud to say that we've actually doubled the number of downloads in just 1 year alone, which is just so exciting. And we'll get into podcasts here in a bit. So, here's the thing. Your audience probably lives on every social media platform out there, right? So it can be very overwhelming to figure out which channels to prioritize. My rule of thumb is to pick 3 channels that you're having the most success with and focus on them. Then you can set some time aside to maybe explore one additional channel every year. Now, again, the key here is to stay very in tune with your audience, as their preferences may change over time. So make sure to challenge yourself to explore those additional channels where you see your audience growing and expanding. That way you won't be caught off guard when they suddenly start using a new social media tool and you have to play catch up. Krista, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. I think, earlier this year I was on a webinar with one of my friends, Jen Del Conte from Clue with a K. And she really talked about, the importance of relationship building and identifying the right channels for your audience, how, things change so fast. And sometimes we rely on, all this data and all this research to figure out where we should activate. But sometimes you just have to get the nitty gritty and have those conversations so that you can move quicker as marketers, especially in this kind of market that we're in right now, where you need to be active and responsive to what's going on in the moment, right? So, and where people want to be. So one of her recommendations that she gave me was just having regular 15-minute coffee chats with your community to kind of understand their preferences, where they're at, what their attitude is, where they're finding information, to help really curate a plan that resonates with them, right? What motivates them? What are they, what's a deciding factor? And that can help then choose these channels for yourself. So I think, if we can boil that down to like a few key points of how you can find these channels that, are great for your audience. I think one, Check out industry specific forums and online communities where your target audience is active. What kind of things are they saying? Where are they getting that info that can help you identify patterns and trends and things that they prefer, and also the type of content that they really want to engage with, right? And then 2, do analyze your website analytics. Where's your traffic coming from? This can give you an idea of what channels are working right now that you might want to lean into or leverage more. Social listening tools to monitor conversations related to your brand or industry. Where are those happening? How can you be involved or active on those existing channels? And then attending industry events, conferences, meetups, anything you can to connect with your target audience to understand who they are, right? Don't underestimate that power of that direct conversation. When you have that, or you're asking them questions, you'll get better answers that can allow you to activate quicker. So I just think be open, look for opportunity, and make sure that you're not afraid to just straight ask people, where do they want to hear? Where are they getting information? What kind of information do they like? Sometimes I think we're also hesitant to actually ask the question, that we want to just keep trying to deliver stuff. Don't be afraid to, poll your audience. And I think that leads us nicely into, so with all of that, with some of the work that Tiffany and I have been doing this year and looking at our channels, and what channels are we thinking about for 2024, right? We're coming up at the end of the year. What are you thinking about in your marketing plans? So I just went in and asked ChatGPT to come up with my channel mix. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just kidding. Legal said I can't do that. No, but really, right? We need a human aspect behind what we're doing and how we're doing and how we're distributing our brand message. So with that, I'm going to give it over to Tiff to talk about how she's thinking about it and what's on her mind.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise out there. There's new channels are emerging every day. People are consuming content and purchasing technology in different ways. Our buyers are definitely changing, and they're researching your offerings in different ways. And I'm sure all of you can relate to this. One example of this is TikTok and also YouTube. But of course, whether you like it or not, I know there's some TikTok can be kind of frowned upon, but it is here to stay. And it's only growing. So don't be naive to that, and, make sure that you are looking into that, and whether that's, testing the waters out within YouTube versus TikTok, Instagram Reels, something like that. Just want to be mindful that TikTok is not going away. At the end of the day, people are on social media for 2 reasons: 1, to be entertained, and then 2, to be educated. On my end, I'm seeing a downshift in Google search, and we're actually finding that people are using TikTok and YouTube as their primary search engine. There's also a lot of buzz around AI and how this is going to impact organic and paid search in 2024. So lots of things to just take into consideration next year. Now, again, full transparency, it can definitely be very challenging to determine which channels to invest in. Go back to your audience, do your research, talk to your sales team and your best customers, create posts and surveys like Carissa mentioned before. And, the surveys can be very, very simple. It does not need to be this professional looking survey. It could be a Google survey. It could be, I don't know. There's so many, Survey Monkey. It could be anything. And you could simply just send an email out to your best customers today and say, hey, what channels are you, what channels are you on today? Where do you make some of your buying decision? Where are you investing in professional development? Those are the channels that you should definitely take in consideration next year. But don't forget about the ones that are already performing for your company this year. Double down on those, and then maybe set time aside, like I said in the beginning, to explore that one additional channel next year.
Yeah, I'm gonna chime in because we got on that same note, we got a question from Mike about ways to conduct market research without a big budget. And I've been a part of organizations and a lot of different market research studies where, you know, they're costly and you spend a lot of time working with this contractor, and then you sit on the calls and you see, and I'm like, they're really serving 20 people sometimes, or 50 people. And sometimes they're just 30-minute conversations. And I found that some of this more like grassrootsy ways to solicit feedback, like polls or surveys or even LinkedIn surveys or the weekly coffee chats. I mean, I have 2 a week with my customers or my audience that I'm really trying to communicate with. I get better and the same level of information during those times than I do from some of these big market studies, right? So there's a time and a place for each, especially because if you need to do it quickly and in a short period of time, right, that's when you do these big studies. But if you can just keep your pulse point on that, one, it costs you nothing but your time and energy, which, yes, I know is a part of like resource allocation, but you can make that same thing happen and draw those same results. So you can say, based on this research, based on these conversations, I found these things. So there are ways to get scrappy about it if you just prioritize it as a part of one of your job functions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you can start small too by if you've got, you know, Salesforce or HubSpot as your CRM platform. This is something that we did this year. I would just take like your top, you know, 50, 100 accounts and get on a call with them, or have the account manager get on a call with them, and you can ask these same questions. So it really is as easy as that. I know it would be time consuming, but again, if you are experiencing like a budget constraint, which I know most of us are, that would be something to look into. Great question. All right. So on the next slide here, okay, yes. So this is a very interesting approach that we tried this year. I'll start by saying, and I'm sure you guys have all heard, video, video, video. It's not going away, especially short form video content. And there are so many different creative ways to take that long form content. And even when you're speaking of, you know, events, and trim that down into bite-sized pieces and use it across your paid social, organic social, YouTube channel, a blog. Like there's tons of different use cases. So this was actually promoting an ebook, and this ebook was actually probably 10 pages. And I want everybody to put in the chat here, when is the last time you read a B2B like one pager or blog post or article from end to end? When is the last time? And if you do so, that's great. That's wonderful. I certainly, I skim maybe the very beginning, anything in bold, and then I go down to the bottom. But normally, like, if you really want to get my attention, I want to see a video. I want to see something fun, unique, like what's going to make me stop from scrolling on my news feed. So see Laura, never. That's hilarious. That's actually kind of me too. So that's great. Let's watch this at we can stop it at the 20-second mark if you want to, Carissa.
Hi, everyone. It's Lawrence. We all know that events have changed a lot in the last few years. So today, we're going to talk about 5 key industry trends that we're seeing right now. And if you want to discover more about this, take a look at our ebook in the description below. Now, trend number 1, the race for quality event space. In-person events, they're back, but so is the challenge.
So that's just an example of kind of taking a long form piece of content and then trimming that down into bite-sized pieces, because again, and all of this really does go back to your audience. I do want to preference that. I see a lot of people are saying they scan. That's great. Some read from end to end. Some are a never, like Laura, and that's like me. So just think creativity. I cannot say that word today for some reason. Creatively about the approach. And again, just who is your audience? Because if it's a younger generation, they're more than likely to consume video content and prefer that style more so than a very long ebook or blog. So just keep that in mind as you're planning next year.
Yeah, I think, to put it in context of your events, right? You could use something like this to promote your sessions or have your sponsors create videos, right? What's going on at their booth, or what could you put out in your mobile app, right? To help make it engaging, to help them navigate on site, right? And I think, we're all thinking that, well, how do we get this done, right? How do we make all these videos if we don't have the budget to outsource them to an agency, or our in-house creative team doesn't have the time to quickly pull this off, right? And if you don't have a video team or anything like that, that's okay. There's so many tools out there to help you trim long form content or record short content and edit short content quickly, right, into these bite-sized pieces. And if you're not finding a way to make this happen, it's you're missing an opportunity, right? Because the sheer amount of video out there now and the general audience's preference to consuming information that way is staggering. I think about, when I used to go and search for, I want a chocolate chip cookie recipe on Google, and then I would read through these articles. Right now I do it based on video. I want to see the 30-second clip of someone making that cookie recipe. I want to see what it looks like at the end, and then I'll go and click the recipe. So I also think video is a really interesting way to lead to longer form content or blog posts. It gives people kind of that proof point of why they should read it or why they should take the time to do that. And then according to Cisco, right, video content was estimated to account for over 82% of overall internet traffic just last year, which is crazy. And it's only estimated to keep going up. So you think about all of the information on the internet, all of the content on the internet, 82% people want that video. They are that's the type of content that they are engaging with. Why? I mean, it's engaging, it's immersive, right? It's bingeable, it's snackable. It makes people want more, right? To continue a conversation, to keep watching videos. And sometimes we all consume and we consume and we consume, and maybe by accident we've been scrolling for 2 hours and we have no idea what's going on, right? Video is no longer nice to have. It's a must have as a go-to marketing format, regardless of what channel you put it on. I think it's funny because I'm not on TikTok, but I watch a lot of TikToks. They're just through other channels that I'm on. And TikTok and this short form concept of video is changing the way we all want to consume and reprogramming the attention spans of everybody in the audience. So that's kind of how everybody's being taught and trained to consume information now. So no matter what your specific channel is, no matter what channels are working for you, find a way to make content for that channel that's consumable to your audience. And short form video is just one of our hot suggestions here.
Yeah, that's a great point about TikTok, and just full transparency. Cvent does not have a TikTok, and that's because most of our audience, we were seeing great performance on YouTube, and obviously with YouTube content and TikTok, it would have to be different, and you would have to do it right. So my goal here at Cvent was like, okay, let's just prove that YouTube is a successful channel for us, and it has been this year, and let's do it again next year and really double down on those efforts. And then that kind of builds my use case to senior stakeholders who actually want to see like ROI and things like that to get a TikTok account. So I'm not saying at the end of the day that, yes, we're going to go get a TikTok account, but we've seen great success with YouTube. And we've also kind of tested that TikTok format on Instagram. So Instagram Reels, you have Facebook stories, like Facebook owns Instagram, Google owns YouTube. So all of it just kind of intertwines. So, just think that through, and don't just go and, create an Instagram a channel for your company or recommend it, or YouTube, without actually having some type of data point to prove that it's going to work, and here's why. Okay, so podcasts. Yes, this is my favorite. I actually lead our podcast strategy here at Cvent, and this whole podcasting has been, I like to call it my baby, because it really is. And, you might be wondering who the heck here cares about podcasts. I love to see in the chat how many of you do tune into a podcast. It doesn't have to be B2B. It could be a crime podcast or a how-to podcast, professional development, could be anything. So I have some cool stats here to share that 60% of Americans listen to podcasts. That's more than half of our nation. So that to me is telling us, okay, this is not just a trend, it's a lifestyle. And I know for me, I'm a new mom, and I don't have time to really sit through and read a blog or read an ebook. I would love to hear about that in the format of a podcast when I'm on my way to drop my daughter off, or I'm in the shower, or I'm walking, or I'm cooking, anything like that, just kind of this on the go. And I think that's what makes podcasts so unique and fresh, is that it is truly consumed at the listener's own time and frequency. And they can listen to it at any time. And the best thing about it is it's fresh, and it's this untapped way for customers and prospects to consume information. And it definitely puts you at the front and center of thought leadership, brand presence, community building. And then you can totally repurpose that podcast episode into an event session or a webinar or a blog post, and vice versa. So here's one of my examples. Over to the left here, this was actually, this was a podcast episode, but what we did with this is we repurposed content from an existing webinar. So we had a lot of attendees. There was great engagement in the chat and questions. So we figured, okay, this is probably a good webinar that we could repurpose into a podcast episode. So I did have the guest speaker and the host go into our recording platform and re-record the webinar into a podcast so that it would have more of that podcast look and feel. But the great thing about this is it was all repurposed content. So other than the host and guest speaker going in and hitting record and talking about the same thing in 15 minutes versus an hour, we saw great success there. And then I took that long form video content, and then I sliced it down into these bite-sized pieces, and then distributed that on our social media channels. And then our host actually also posted it on her own LinkedIn channel, which we'll talk about personal branding here in a minute. But this one webinar, it turned into this kind of multi-channel integrated campaign, right? So when you think about events and event promotion, you can think of it in the same vein. There are always ways to promote the event and your brand through this tactic before, during, and after your event. So definitely going into 2024, video content, short form video content, it's here to stay. And there's just several use cases from even just one event session that can turn into this multi-integrated campaign. So I'm going to turn the table here over to Carissa to talk a little bit more about personal branding.
Personal branding. And because it's Friday, and because I just feel like getting a little bit goofy, here's a whole bunch of pictures of me. I'm going to use myself as a little case study here. Now, I'm not our key influencer here at Cvent, but I want to talk a little bit about personal branding on LinkedIn for your organization, right? The concept of creator and influencer channels, right, is not anything that is revolutionary, and it just continues to pick up steam, right? Influencer marketing was named the #1 emerging marketing trend still last year, right? According to the HubSpot State of the Marketing Report. And that makes sense, right? Because the global influencer marketing industry is predicted to have surpassed $16 billion last year. That's a wild amount of money. And when you think beyond, the Instagram influencers where, like I'm buying the sweater that I saw somebody wear in the reel because like, why not, right? How and where can we as marketing professionals, right, find or create real influencers for your organization? There's so much now when you look at social channels, right? My Cvent, for example, they have hundreds of thousands of followers on LinkedIn. I have not even near that much, but one post of mine gets significantly more impressions than one post of Cvent's. Why? Because the algorithms on these channels really, really prefer and are trying to promote individually led content. So when we're thinking about, hey, I'm trying to promote something to a certain audience or to a certain type of person in a certain area or for a certain event, right? Who are your internal champions? Who are your influencers, and how can you leverage them? And we've done a lot of testing with this year with me and then a whole bunch of other people at Cvent. And I'm just one small piece of this puzzle and example, but I've been able to then say, here's my network, here's where they are. And they can translate and say, my posts not only get more impressions than the company posts, but because I'm in that network of individuals, I'm hitting the right audience as well. So I can see the job titles, I can see the industry, I can see size of organization from the people that looked at my stuff. I can also see if we are promoting events, where is the event? Is it in San Antonio? Is it in Boston? Is it in Vegas? And I can check and make sure that my posts are resonating in that area. So we've built traffic and interest by doing a lot of this year, right? So how can you leverage or find champions and help reposition some of our content strategy or our PR strategy to be distributed and champion individual voices within our organizations, right? Because people want that authenticity. They want to know, they want to work with other people. They want to feel like they know what you're about. And sometimes when it's always your brand, talking about your brand, talking about your brand and what they're doing, it feels too planned. And people want it to feel a little bit less planned, even though I do a lot of marketing to marketers, even though we all know that it's equally as planned, it just feels a little bit more genuine, right? So influencer marketing, this concept of, individual voices to promote your organization message and promote your events, I think is huge. So figure out, who are the 3 people at your organization that maybe you could test this with this year, or maybe that you're doing that. Maybe you're already doing it, lean into it, give them more ways to try it out, help them write more content. I think the opportunities here for you guys are endless.
I was going to add too, I was laughing when Krista said that, because I was going to say it feels B2B. So, B2B is known to be, quite frankly, boring marketing, and it shouldn't be. And it doesn't need to be. So, my advice is always think B2C, because at the end of the day, you're still promoting and marketing to a human being. And I think that personal branding is so impactful, and we're kind of testing this out as well for our podcast. As I mentioned, our host will promote the podcast on their own LinkedIn channel. Yes, we do have Cvent branded LinkedIn posting about our podcast, but what works really, really well and even better is when we have the host post. That rhymed. And so what we've done now with like our paid social strategy and promoting our podcast in that way, we actually just started testing literally December 1st. We started testing boosting that person's post. So yes, it is an ad, but it does not look and feel like an ad. So that's like, again, a new kind of tactic, same channel, different tactic that we're testing the waters with this year, doing like a soft launch, seeing where that goes. And then who knows, before you know it, if, Carissa is attending an event, which I know next year she's got a ton of events that she's going to be going to, we may boost her post and see where that goes. So, but with all of that said, it's really hard to track, right? For a company, your CMO, your CEO, your CFO is like, okay, where's the data? Where's the ROI? Like, why does this matter? Yeah, it has great engagement, but where's the pipeline? Where's the opportunities? And that's a really great question. So I'm very curious to know if anybody here knows or has heard of the term dark social or dark funnel. Just drop it in the chat. No, yes, sometimes. So, the dark social is where a lot of purchasing decisions happen, but there's no tracking or intent data. So dark social includes places like LinkedIn DMs and comments, YouTube, podcast, networking events, word of mouth, through text messaging, Zoom DMs and communities. Or a great one is maybe the person used your software at another company, and because they valued and trusted your company so much, they were influencers when the time came and they needed your software at the new company that they're working for. An example of this is I registered for an event a few months ago. Now, I saw a lot of chatter and hype on LinkedIn around the event. A lot of my marketing influencers were either speaking or attending. I didn't click on the registration link or convert on their paid social effort. And I also didn't click on the organic registration link either. But a few weeks later, I remember what the event was called. So I searched for the event on Google and I converted from there. And I love to know if anyone has also experienced this, like, with maybe you're purchasing a car and you're talking to one of your friends or your buddies on like, hey, which brand is the best to get? It's things like that, where it's that word of mouth that you just cannot track. Now, in my case, for example, when I did convert on Google, if you're looking at your attribution report, like Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, whichever web analytic platform you're using, the lead source would say organic search conversion. Now, technically, that is true. That is where I converted. But what we want to care about as, marketers, presenting this out to the CEO, the CFO, is at which point did that person raise their hand and want to convert? So for me, it was actually just seeing a bunch of chatter on LinkedIn. So this is what I mean by the dark social. And it's so important to understand that just because you cannot easily track the success of a tactic or a channel, that does not mean that it's not working. Now, I know a lot of you are probably like, okay, but how can you track it? So I like to call this self-attribution. This includes things like talking to your best customers and asking them, hey, like, how did you hear about us? Something that we're testing here at Cvent next year is adding a free text form field on one of our high intent web forms for how did you hear about us? So here's a few recent screenshots of the dark social kind of in action. You have one person is asking in a Slack community if anyone knows of a paid advertising reporting platform. Another screenshot of a review on a third-party review site, in this case, G2. And then there's Emily asking her marketing community on LinkedIn if anyone recommends a video AI platform. Another Slack community asking about G2. And then one of my personal favorites, a LinkedIn DM. Now, this person has actually become one of my favorite content marketers. Her name is Emma Stratton. I actually attended an event and I heard her speak. I started following her on LinkedIn and engaging with her posts. She later DM'd me and was like, hey, you should subscribe to my newsletter, which I had no idea existed. So, now if we ever need a content agency at Cvent, who do you think the very first person who I'm going to recommend? It's going to be Emma. You got it. So that is truly the power of your brand and the dark social. Your attribution software will not be able to provide this type of insight into the tactics that are actually driving revenue for your business. And you can very much think of that in the vein of kind of this B2C mantra. Like anytime you're purchasing, I like to say this is kind of a weird example, but this is very human-like. I was in desperate need of a new rug. I have 2 golden retrievers. I needed a rug that was washable. And so I started just kind of Googling things, you know, trying to find like best price, best quality. Well, I saw, I think it was Rugs Are Us or something like that. And boutique rugs. Those were the 2. It was all over my Facebook. And I'm like, okay, you know, I need to like look into that because it seems like a good price. I saw their ad over and over again on my Facebook channel. About 2 months later, I'm like, okay, I really need to purchase that rug. What was that called again? And then I'm like, oh yeah, boutique rugs. Went into Google, typed in boutique rugs, found the rug, bought it. Now, again, when they're looking at their metrics, it's very much going to say, hey, this person converted on organic social. But actually, what really got my attention was that paid social ad. And that's what kept that brand in mind when I was ready to make that purchasing decision. So I'm sure that that's happened to all of you. And I would love to hear like your examples. But, you know, needless to say, the key takeaway here is don't be naive to what's happening in the dark social. Invest time in your self-attribution and know that just because you cannot directly tie those revenue to those tactics, it does not mean that it's not working. You just have to set the guardrails up and identify the different KPIs and then communicate that to your team. And again, that self-attribution is really going to help validate, you know, where these leads are truly coming from at like first touch and last touch.
I love that. And Chuck put a bunch of really great information in here about dark social. And I want to address one thing, because I think your point about now some of these social media channels becoming just media channels because brands are hesitant to interact and engage, I think is such a huge thing, because I think that's going to make or break brands going forward. The ones that do are the ones that are going to win. Because to your point, right? Dark social is taking over. This concept is taking over. So if you don't embrace it as a two-way communication channel, you're not going to win in that space. And that is going to be the dominant space. I've done a lot of work in the last year researching Gen Z as a new demographic, right? Because they're up and coming. They're going to be here. They're starting to work. In 5 years, they're going to make up the majority of our workforce. And they are not a passive audience. They don't believe in that. They want to be a part of every conversation. They have an opinion on everything. So when you're thinking about your marketing strategy, your content strategy, and what your social strategy really is, even if you feel like you have a good two-way thing going right now, you're going to it's got that two-way combo is going to have to continue to grow as the new demographic comes in. And that really is where businesses and decisions are being made. So I love that. And then it leads us into kind of our next point, which is like, look, people want to have conversations. They want all this open stuff. There's all this media that we need to do. So is the concept of email marketing completely dead? Is it not a thing anymore? And it's kind of a funny question, right? Especially because we're inundated with so many emails as well. And I have a similar story to some of Tiffany's about how she converted through dark social, right? I'm a big Salesforce fan, and I've been to Dreamforce or Salesforce Connections here in Chicago near me a couple times. And last year leading up to it, I saw it all over my social media channels, right? I follow them. All of my friends were going, people in my network. And I was really well aware then of all of that hype that was going on. But I wasn't going in person. What I did get, though, after all this momentum and buildup, was a really, really well-timed email, probably at about a week or two before, giving me a really easy, like, click here and get access to the event virtually. It made it easy for me. It was timed out well. It was perfect in my journey of the momentum and the buildup and the timing of the event. And that is how I converted. So that email was kind of like the tipping point that made me take the action. And that's why I'm going to say email is not dead. It is still a very important part in your user journey, in your communication journey, in your journey to get people to convert or register for an event or, take any sort of action that you want. And I think, it goes beyond saying that that's why this omni-channel marketing strategy is so key. Daniel Murray, who's one of my favorites from the Marketing Millennials, because I think he's just hilarious. He said, most of the time your audience is not ready to buy. They're not always ready to take action. So the goal of all this marketing and the goal of distributing some of this content, right, is to keep your brand, to keep your organization or your event or whatever you're trying to promote top of mind. So that way, when your audience is ready, they think of you first. And then you're giving them the supplies and the tools through other channel marketing to take action. So a few things about email, because it's like, how can we stay fresh? People are just putting in email templates to ChatGPT or AI. How do I stand out? And I think the thing to think about all the time is you could have the greatest email content in the entire world, but if people aren't opening it, doesn't matter. So focus on that open rate. So much of the time we invest all of our time into writing the contents of the email, but our open rates are 3%. We need to get more people to open. So here are my 5 quick tips for helping boost email open rates, right? Add preview first. Make sure that you use exciting words first. Preview, early access. Emojis perform really well. If you're not quite comfortable there, try fun font treatments with your letters, like casing or exclamation points, right? That's seen a boost in subject lines lately across all industries. Be super actionable. Think about your from text, right? If you get an email from Carissa or Carissa at Cvent, you're probably going to open it over Cvent newsletter or Cvent events invitation, right? And I highly recommend, I know we've talked about LinkedIn a lot on this call. Jay Schwendelson is really good at email marketing in particular and is always staying on target with the trend. So if you want to keep kind of honing this craft, he's always on top of what's going on. So we're talking about event promotions here today, right? And I'm going to lead us to our final question, which is, what is the future of events and brand marketing? This is kind of like a crazy thing, because if you are doing all this stuff, right, and you're distributing all this information and content, and you're giving all this two-way conversations on all of these things, and where is the FOMO experience of the event that you're hosting? Sometimes cropping and reuse it can feel like you might be diminishing the value of the in-person stuff. So how do you harness it in a way to further engage people who are at your event, maybe not at your event, or you think about your audience? And there's people out there that wanted to come and couldn't make it, or that made the decision not to come. So how do you still apply the content and the event and all that work you went into it to that portion of your audience, right? And Tiffany's going to talk a little bit about how you can use channels to tell your story and build that event FOMO concept right before, during, and after.
Yeah, so I'll kick us off with starting, of course, before the event. So this was a webinar that we were promoting, and I was like, okay, we need to think B2C, and make it relatable, make it human, mom to mom or parent to parent. Like, how can we make this fun? And so I'm excited to show you, we can watch this little clip here that we used for Instagram and YouTube Shorts.
Let's talk about the new kid on the block, the event technologist. My name is Taylor Bond, lead event technologist here at Cvent. I'll be joined by my colleague, Julie Haddix, Senior Director of Industry Marketing, also at Cvent. We promise not to just share cute photos of our kids the whole time, although they are really cute. We will be talking about the latest and greatest trends in event technology, and I will be sharing my personal thoughts and experiences in the role itself. We look forward to seeing you all there.
So it was really just as simple as that. We literally had the host record this on their iPhone, and then we just made a couple of edits in our video automation platform, which is Descript. And we added closed captions, and we added an end board. That was it. And then we got it live. So it was just a fun and exciting way to kind of test this out. And we did this on Instagram stories and YouTube shorts. And this was actually, it's hard to say with it being great content around event technologists, but this was one of our most highest reg webinars of this year. And we had a really, really great show rate. So, it's, again, it is hard to attribute the true success, but we know at the end of the day, like, hey, this has got to be working. Like, let's keep doing this and testing this out. So that is before the event. Now, going over to during the event. Okay, so this is a screenshot. This is Arthur at Chili Piper. He's a evangelist there at his company. And if you have attended any of the B2B marketing events, you probably more than likely have seen him. So here he's attending an event and interviewing marketers like on the fly, on the escalator, actually, asking what they have slashed from their 2023 budgets. So this is a perfect example of a unique and entertaining yet educational story-like video from on the ground at an event. So you don't need a full house or full in-house video production team to pull something like this off. During the event, you can just use your mobile device. There's tons of apps out there that we can kind of get into a little bit later. And then you can have your, the team that is not attending the event, either your marketers or video team, to edit those and add closed captions within Descript or Visme or Canva, something like that. The most important note to take advantage of here is take advantage of the event itself. Just like Arthur at Chili Piper, make the most of your on-site hours. It doesn't matter the size, if it's in person, virtual, or webinar. Definitely take advantage of your audience right then and there. It's a great opportunity to build a community, share ideas, network with like-minded people. And then again, take advantage of those event analytics, figure out who is attending your event. If it's a series or the same people keep coming back, are you seeing a higher attendance rate at each event? This, again, could all be attributed to dark social, like word of mouth, like we mentioned earlier. Take advantage of those interactive tools on site, gamification, chat, Q&A. How are your attendees interacting with one another? What questions are they asking? You can definitely use all of this data to source your next webinar or your podcast idea, or you could meet somebody really cool and they could be your next guest speaker. So again, the use cases goes on here, but I think this is a really creative approach to just truly take advantage on site.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much stuff. If you're hosting an on-site event or if you're going on site, there's so much work that has gone into your presence there, right? What you look like, what your staff is wearing, what your activations are, the ball pit in the ballroom, right? Or like what snacks you have. And sometimes part of building that hype is just bringing visibility to it. I mean, you have no idea how many times I've been at an event or a conference and, you've got the social screen running in between sessions and people are like, oh man, there's a champagne wheel of fortune going on in, room D. And then it makes me want to go and keeps interacting. And then it makes the people that aren't there be like, I understand what this brand is about. That vibe, they're fun, right? So figure out ways to show off the work that your teams have done at your events.
All right. And then building hype after the event. Of course, once you invest in that first part, honestly, the rest is just all about distribution. Take those long form video sessions that you get from your event and distribute them and trim those down into short form video content. Distribute those onto your organic social channels. You could do some paid social. You could do Instagram Reels, Facebook Stories, wherever your audience is living. And I think that's, still to this day, it's something that we've really honed in on this year. And I don't think it's going to change at all going into next year.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about, this is one of my favorite concepts of what channels should we use to promote events, right? And it's kind of like meta, right? I'm going to use events to promote other events. wild, right? I mean, organizing micro, macro events and events in between events can be a really powerful thing to keep people engaged, right? And maintain momentum and promote other things. I think the whole thing of I'm trying to build followers and not just viewers or attendees, right? I want them invested in my brand and my message. It's not about one event. We think about it so siloed of I need to get people to register. I need to get them to come. Then when they come, I need them to convert after, right? And it's like, look, in the world of customer centricity and longer buying cycles, we want to build the following for whatever our organization is, whatever product we're trying to sell, right? And you can start by organizing, two ways. One, make smaller events, intimate events that allow you to build the relationship and foster engagement amongst a certain group of people so that they want to come to your bigger events, right? Give them a taste of what's going on. You've attended some of these smaller things. I'm going to then treat you to VIP treatment if you come to my large conference, right? Special offers, exclusive access when they come on site. One of my favorite things that a big conference does is they have an unlisted session every year that you only find out through word of mouth. You don't know when it is or where it's going, but you find that out through that network or nuggets that you get from people, right? Or go backwards, right? If you have a large event, figure out who are the most engaged, exciting people, who are the real VIPs, and then keep nurturing them after at special VIP things or more networking or special experiences, right? Because there are so many events that happen and they happen throughout that buyer stage and they help keep that momentum going. So it's not that you're building and building and building and you have this person that had this great experience and then you kind of leave them. It's figuring out what are all those in person, what are all those virtual, what are all of those event experiences that people touch. And I really want to shift our concept of the event channel, right? As it's a community building engine. It is the fastest, best way to build community connection and personal connection with whoever your audience is, and stoking the fire with things that are working. And you're keeping the taste of events and energy going with other events. So you're connecting events to each other, you're connecting events to these other channels, and then you're connecting your audience with your events and your brand story. It's very meta for a Friday.
All right, I know we only have a couple more minutes, so I'm going to wrap things up here. I know it was a ton of information. So again, if you have any questions, be sure to drop those in, or you can, chat in the chat box. Okay, so to summarize this up, marketers talk to your event planners and event planners talk to your marketers. One, find the top 3 channels your audience lives on, identify your ICP and pick those 3 channels to go all in on this coming year. And then also just set time aside to possibly, if you have the time, which I know we probably don't, explore that one additional channel. And 2, collaborate on new content together. Work with your event planners and your field marketers and understand what content is resonating. Then have your marketers test those new ideas, new video formats, and different channels and figure out what's working and what's not. Whatever is working, I would say just double down on that in 2024. Don't put, a ton of work and effort into finding something new. Just do well what's working today for you. And then 3, think B2C when promoting your events and your brand. B2B marketing does not have to be boring. Your videos do not have to be these perfectly branded, scripted videos. And, don't get me wrong, there is a time and a place for that style. But for event promotion, it definitely needs to be more fun and creative. You need to ask yourself, how is this event different from others? How can we engage all generations and get them to attend our event? And then what's going to make somebody literally stop what they're doing on social media and watch even just 2 seconds of your video? And 4, align on your goals and the KPIs. Don't be naive to the dark social. Video and social promotion is not the easiest data to track and prove success on if you're measuring like MQLs or lead source data. I may have seen your video all over social without clicking on anything, and that video probably got me really excited. But rather than clicking on your video or the reg link, I probably just went to Google and converted directly from there a few weeks later. So again, Just because you cannot easily track the success of these demand gen creation tactics, it does not mean that it's not working. You just need to look at other metrics like reach, unique reach, impressions, video watch time, and then ultimately try and invest in self-attribution. And then 5, recycle existing content. After your event ends, your event shouldn't really end. Think of your on-demand video library, take those long-form video content and curate short videos, and then promote those all throughout your social media channels. You could do email campaigns, your website, blog. You could think of a new podcast episode or webinar episode coming just from that one event session alone. And with that, that is all that we've got. I know we do not have much time, but hopefully if you have any questions, you put those into the Q&A and maybe we can answer those.
Yeah, we can answer, I think we have time for one, but then we should wrap up, but I can facilitate that for you all. Could you, either of you, what's the best type of asset to start with when you plan or repurpose the content to other assets? A blog, ebook, a webinar?
I don't think there's a wrong answer there. I think when we're talking about reusing and recycling, it's what is resonating, what is working, and what do you already have? What are you already producing? We all produce so much content. What do you have that then you can creatively figure out how to maximize the eyes and the message of something that you did? So much of the time it's people are nervous with what that process looks like. And if you figure out what's your current state, it's easier then to get to a point where you can activate repurposing.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both for your time. I know that's so valuable in everybody's schedules. Thank you to all of those who attended and just participating and being so engaged in the chat. We have our final IPR webinar on December 12th, so be sure to check out our website for more information on that. It's on a best-selling book on how to strategically use humor to create productive and healthy workplaces. So thank you both for joining us, and I hope you all have a great weekend.